Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Material Issues. It's episode number 35. Hard to believe that we are, what is that? How many weeks is 35 episodes?
Well, how many weeks?
How many months?
35 weeks.
I have no idea.
No, it's about 9 months.
But I don't know what it is.
8.5, I guess.
All right. That's what... It's all good. Good to see you, my friend David Bash of the International Pop Overthrow Festival. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great, Mark. How are you?
I'm fantastic. It's a wonderful, wonderful day here in South Jersey with 50-degree temperatures. We got all kinds of things happening here on Material Issues, and I know we want to get into this one quickly.
Yeah, let me just apologize in advance. I had some oral surgery a few days ago. I'm taking painkillers, which have a generous amount of codeine in them, so I'm a little bit fuzzy today. But maybe I'll perk up a little bit once we bring our guest on. But yeah, we are very honored to have this gentleman. He's the main man, one of the founders of one of the most iconic Australian pop and rock bands. They're in the ARIA Hall of Fame. That's essentially the Australian equivalent of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame here. Well deserved. And they've been putting out albums for years, although it has been about an 11-year hiatus since their last full length. But they've got a new one coming out very soon. So, and we're all looking forward to that. So, without further ado, would you please give a huge welcome to Mr. Dave Faulkner?
Hey, how are you? Well, I'm a lot closer to this camera than you guys. I might get back a bit.
Here's something for everyone.
Whoa, what's Dave playing?
Cool.
There we go. Well,
and
welcome.
That's part of a new song called Get Out of Dodge from the upcoming album. I was instructed, by the way, Dave, only to play certain tracks and not to say anything more, to let you decide what you wanted to say about it. So,
oh, sure. Well, I mean, there's been a few singles released, so I guess a whole lot of stuff's already out there that you can play. So feel free to play any of those. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to let you play anything else because I think we're announcing the album release date tomorrow.
Nice.
So, we're finally going to be able to tell people what it's called and when it's out and when they can, and other things as well. We've got another little plan tomorrow, which I think the US people know about because of the recent cancelled tour, unfortunately. Right. We announced that we're going to do a live broadcast that people that had tickets to our shows could come and watch. And that's going to be announced tomorrow as well, the date of that. So it's
people
all happening.
Can check that out on your Facebook page, right? If they check out Hoodoo Gurus on Facebook or on Instagram at hoodoo_gurus_official, they'll get pointed in the right directions.
We should have done the show tomorrow. What?
That is true. I could have sat on here all day tomorrow. That's a sad thing. I unfortunately I've got to duck out to a very personal business later on this morning. But we'll do it now and get as much out of the way as we can. Yeah,
well, it's Thursday there, right?
Yeah, it's Thursday morning. It's just gone 10 a.m. and it's summer right now, though outside's a little bit overcast and cool, but and windy. I'm up in a town called Newcastle, north of Sydney. So
there's no truth to the rumor that you could look up the lottery numbers for lottery.
All right,
give me a call. I've always wondered if that would work. I didn't know. No,
but I do believe there is truth to the rumor about the water going down the drain the other direction. You know how the spiral? That is true in the southern hemisphere.
Oh, I've heard, yes.
Yeah.
Well, what can you? We'd like to start off for what's going on right now because that's what a lot of people want to know. What can you tell us about this new album that you're allowed to say? There's been a few singles out. David just played Get Out of Dodge, which is just phenomenal.
Thank you.
That is one catchy tune.
Thank you. Yeah, we were pretty chuffed when we wrote it. It was what happened was we started rehearsing some new songs at the end of 2019, just before the pandemic started, And we did a single called Answered Prayers, and that's on the album as well. And that came out at the end of 2019, December. And then we went back in and did some, and that went so well. We thought, let's try some more and start getting this album together, because it was the first time we recorded with Nick, our new drummer. Our old drummer, Mark Kingsman, who had been with us since our second album, retired about 5 years ago. And then he came back for a few months because he realised he missed it, but then he realised once he scratched that itch, he didn't miss it after all, and he wanted to go back and retire. I mean, Mark, he gave a lifetime of drumming, and he's tired. That's all.
He's the Brett Favre of the Hoodoo Gurus. You may not know what I'm talking about there.
Well, he's all the Tom Brady. He's just gone on. He went on for a very long time, and he's been a powerhouse, but. Finally, he reached his limit of touring, and mainly the touring and stuff like that got to him. He just said, I don't want to do that anymore. He had some money put aside. Anyway, I won't talk about that some more. But we have Nick on drums, and that first single was a bit of a test case for us to see, will we like what it sounds like with a new drummer? Because we weren't sure. And, we were very happy with what happened, and Nick is fantastic. Nick's, he's got a pedigree anyway that goes back a long way. He was in Radio Birdman, he was in a band called the Celibate Rifles, another band called Tumbleweed, all quite legendary bands.
Yeah. No name bands, all of them.
Yeah, so
he's lucky to be with the Gurus. Yeah.
Well, we're lucky, and the funny thing is, he was the third drummer of each of those bands, and now he's our third drummer. So it's weird. He's the third man in.
But
he's a relief pitcher.
The drumming is fantastic, though, because there's one thing you think about. All your albums prior, the drums had a very distinctive thunder. Yeah. That's kind of, when I think of Hoodoo Gurus, or people say to me, what are they all about? I always talk about it's like really powerful pop. And a lot of it is the drumming and the bass, the bass combo, the backbeat of the whole thing. So you bring in someone brand new like that, you wonder, all right, well,
it's a risk, it's a gamble, and as you say, we've been very lucky that having James Baker on our first album and then Mark after that, we've had two exceptional drummers, and I've over the years I've become more and more appreciative of how good they were. I mean, I just took them for granted a little bit because they were there and they just played like that. But now that we've tried a few people when Mark hung up his spurs, and we were surprised at how hard it was to do these songs. They just sounded wrong in the wrong hands, and Nick was the one that filled the gap, and he made us feel like a bit more like ourselves. At the same time, Nick added a certain character that, just as we changed from James to Mark, there's a sort of a shift in the sound a little bit, and the feel. There's a feel change as well, which I think you can hear on the new album.
Yep.
Not to change the subject. Well, how come people say that and then they follow through with what they
and
say?
They completely change the subject.
I just heard from somebody I believe David Minchin from The Innocents.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, cool.
I think he's going to come and play our music festival, International Pop Overthrow in Liverpool.
Oh, brilliant!
At the Cavern Club. Yeah, Dave and The Innocents have played before, and they are wonderful.
Excellent. Oh, that's great. They're still out there pounding the hutchings, as they say, or stamping the hutchings. I don't know what the term is in politics. Whatever it is that politicians do. Manning the hustings. I don't know.
You grew up in Perth.
Yeah.
You got your start. Who are some of the? I mean, obviously the Beatles, but who were some of the Australian bands that you were listening to that people outside of Australia may not know about as much?
Well, you'd know about this one because the most obvious one is like the equivalent of the Beatles for us in Australia was the Easy Beats.
Easy Beats.
Yeah, I mean, they were the big noise, and we loved them. And of course, another band that we loved a few years later, they started in more the mid '60s, was because Easy Beats started quite early, was the Masters Apprentices.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
They're a great band.
I love them. Yeah.
And then, of course, one of my favorite bands. They only made one album, but the Loved Ones to me are one of the iconic bands from that era in Australia. Even though they only made one record, it is such a great record. You just, you can't imagine how they even made that one, because it's so outside of anything else going around them at the time.
Were you a fan of Zoot at all?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, Zoot. I mean, that version of Eleanor Rigby, I think back in the day, Paul McCartney was incredibly complimentary about that version. He thought it was probably the best cover version of a Beatles song ever.
Wow. Yeah.
So and Rick Springfield was in the Zoot. People might know him better as someone from General Hospital and also Jessie's Girl. but the Zoot was his starting band. He was the guitarist, sort of honcho. They actually had a different singer. Rick wasn't the singer. He was just like the guitar guy.
Right.
But he did all the tricks, throwing the guitar up in the air and all those things. He was quite a dynamic performer and a bit of a looker. So he had a bit of a following even then as just being in the band.
I think he's kind of an alien.
He put out an album last year under the name The Red Locust. It's very, very good. But
okay.
He purposely didn't promote it. He just wanted to do it just for fun. And,
well, he's got enough money to do that, I guess. And that's sort of like, it's a bit like, I think Boz Scaggs is a bit like that. He doesn't need to work, but he just loves doing it. And it's just about making the music he likes. And that's great.
And he doesn't age a minute either. Jesus.
No. Was your first band the Victims, or were there ones before?
Oh, there were ones before. I mean, I had a band in high school, a classic punk guy. I mean, it wasn't 60s punk because it was the 70s, but, we played everything from, we played a real mixed bag. We played a lot of Deep Purple, Black Sabbath, and at the same time, we do a lot of Creedence and, and glam rock like Suzi Quatro and the T-Rex. So it was just the music we were listening to. We didn't sort of know that we were supposed to stick to one genre. To us, it was all rock music, And, of course, you kids, you don't really have that much awareness of, the different tribes there are in music. So that was my high school band. But then after high school, I had a couple of different things I was in. I was in a blues group at one stage. That was my first professional group when I was 18. I kind of, sort of had a few groups in a row, and they took about 6 months at a time. So that was before the Victims, and they were already established, and I joined them as a keyboard player. I didn't play guitar yet, but I was listening to punk rock. The Ramones album had come out, and we were obsessed with that. Mm-hmm. And I just thought, I want to play this music, but I can't play it on keyboards. I've got to play guitar. Seriously, that's what I thought. So I was playing keyboards in this blues group, and then but teaching myself guitar in the off hours, and then that group ended up breaking up, as I say, after about 6 months, and I just happened to meet James Baker at a gig in Perth, which was the first official punk rock gig by a band that I had been in previously. I did a band called the Cheap Nasties. I was in them for like 3 rehearsals, and it's a long story, but I was playing keyboards, and so anyway, whatever. I didn't stay with them, but they actually kept going and rehearsing. They eventually got this gig in early '77. And James had just come back from being over in the US and UK, and he'd hung out with Sid Vicious, and he'd seen the Ramones and all that stuff. And he even auditioned for the Clash, and they wanted him to play drums, to replace Terry Chimes. But James had to come back to Australia because he'd run out of money. He was away for nearly a whole year, traveling. He started in Los Angeles and sort of worked his way across and around the world and back to Perth again. But anyway, so James met me that night at this gig because, everyone that saw the ad in the paper, punk rock gig tonight, anyone that had no one knew there's any bands in town that, because Perth's quite a provincial place. It's a smaller city. And, and that music was also incredibly, unknown in the mainstream. It was just people that bought music magazines and were obsessive about music had heard of it. And a lot of them didn't like it because they liked other things, maybe prog rock or whatever, those sort of music fans. But the ones that like rock and roll and were into like the New York Dolls or the Stooges or whatever were kind of ready for what was happening in the underground. And that's who clued into it. And so all these like-minded people sort of all came to this one gig because, hey, there's something happening tonight in town. Never thought that had happened. And James and I struck up a conversation. He said, let's form a group. That night he said it, and so we formed the Victims. And, that was my first punk rock group and my first group that had any of my songs, anywhere.
Are you saying you really hadn't picked up a guitar until later in your teens? It was all keyboard? Or basically, I taught myself piano. And and played like organ, whatever. Didn't have any synths, but so it was a Yamaha organ was really good. And in fact, Guy Pretty were using it for many years in the beginning of their career. My actual keyboard, but I didn't play guitar at all. So I just taught myself, and unfortunately, that was a big mistake because I have a kind of an awkward technique that doesn't let me actually improve. I just I fret. I hold the pick wrong and I fret incorrectly. So both hands are wrong. Perfect.
But for that I do have a certain sound to my playing, like a certain attack.
I was gonna say that since you're in Australia, American baseball is really big. Hank Aaron, one of the most famous players of all time, when he was brought up, he used to bat cross-handed. Well, that's why he had so much. That's why his wrists were so strong.
Wow. So what's cross-handed? What's that?
Meaning instead of putting your right, he put his left-handed.
Whoa! Even though he's a right-handed hitter, but he that is weird.
Until he got to the minor leagues and got corrected. But it was probably because of that he developed the wrist that he did.
Yeah. Yeah.
So sometimes having what you would call a defect or something distinct that can create a very distinct.
I got lots of defects, believe me. But unfortunately, my technique defect wasn't the sort of one that would actually make me a better guitarist. It just made me a distinctive guitarist. I still am quite a bad guitarist in terms of technique, and I can never advance to any level of great expertise in that regard. But I never wanted to anyway. It's not my thing. I'm a writer more than anything, and I prefer rhythm guitar. I mean, I play occasionally, and I think I've got a couple on the new album, but I've only ever done a few leads in the whole history of the band anyway. I leave that. Oh, what have I done?
Wow. you are the 10,000th caller.
That was me. Well, Dave, that was good timing, though. I like it.
When you write though, Dave, are you writing with guitar in hand, or are you writing on the keyboard?
Mostly, I don't remember writing any Hoodoo Guru songs on a keyboard, but I have written music on a keyboard. But no, I always write on the guitar for the Gurus, and most songs I write on the guitar. But sometimes I'll just fool around the keyboard and it comes out a bit more. I don't know how to explain it. I guess it's the same thing you'd hear about Pete Townsend. He used to write on keyboard because it freed him up.
Right.
Because he knows guitar so well that keyboard was kind of like an unknown terrain for him, and so therefore he'd have happy accidents more often.
Right.
Well, guitar is still kind of enough of an awkward thing for me that I have those happy accidents on guitar, so I don't need to change to a keyboard for that.
So you moved over to Sydney. Is that what bands in Perth or in Melbourne or anywhere, was that what you guys aspired to? Was Sydney the place to go?
Was Sydney or Melbourne? They're the two biggest cities in Australia, and obviously still are. They're the ones you'd probably hear the most about. And they were the home of the record industry and television, you name it. Like it's like New York, LA in a sense, or probably closer comparison would be San Francisco, LA, because of the rivalry.
Right.
So in Perth, there was no. It was a smaller market, as I say, I mean, and I've got to give you a quick picture of Australia. For a lot of US people wouldn't realize that Australia is almost the same size as mainland USA. It's only about 10% smaller as a landmass than the whole continental USA, apart from Alaska. If you put in Alaska in, that sort of chips the balance a bit more. Right. But as far as, like the 49 states or 48 states, we are just a little bit smaller, and we're kind of and there's only like a fraction of the population. We've got, I think nowadays, 30 million maybe in Australia, and 5 million are in Sydney, or 6 million, and 4 million are in Melbourne. I maybe I got those figures wrong, but you can look it up on Wikipedia. But it is mainly a bunch in a few cities and a whole lot of empty space in between and around. And so where I grew up in Perth, it's as far away as you can get from Sydney as it's possible. I mean, I'm right on the other extreme of the continent. And in fact, I'm closer to Bali than I am to Sydney.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So for us, there was this huge desert. We were like an island city in an island nation. So we were really isolated. And there wasn't much, as I say, much place you can sort of develop and grow, because there's a finite audience, and also the music we were loving. In the case of alternative, punk rock, whatever, there was even, much smaller audience again, so it was really, probably a few hundred people that would support you. I mean, obviously I had more success than that in Perth. I shouldn't denigrate the fact that I did well in Perth and really got my start there. And we've had a huge following there over the years. I mean, because, we're much bigger, and that music has become more mainstream now, as we know. The world has changed. And indeed, Australia has changed. I mean, now we don't need to move to other cities to become well known. Look, I mean, Tame Impala live in Perth. That's where, that's where he's from, and that he's gone on to the rest of the world from Perth now because you can do it all on the internet. But back then, you had to be door to door, and you had to be under their noses in the big cities, or else they just didn't pay attention to you.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's why I moved to Sydney. It was either Sydney or Melbourne, and I have lots of family in Melbourne because my mother's from there. So I went to Sydney to get away
Even
from
Zimmerman said, don't go to Sydney. Remember the song "Don't Go to Sydney" by the Zimmerman?
Yeah.
No, I don't know that.
No, yeah, that was actually a fairly big hit in the mid '80s,
right?
In Sydney, I believe, or at least on the alternative charts.
I don't know that one.
Oh, you should check it out. It's very good. But anyway, so you did go to Sydney, and
I did.
You formed the Gurus there, I guess, but you had a "la" in the instead of "the." Well, why did you do that?
Le Hoodoo Gurus. Well, we had this when we started. We were kind of like very inspired by the Cramps and this whole sort of at the time the Cramps had this sort of feeling of being very sort of voodoo and sort of there was something kind of weird and sort of Southern Gothic about them, and we sort of like started researching that stuff ourselves as because we loved them so much, and we kind of started getting into that kind of Haiti and voodoo and hoodoo was the equivalent of that, and of course that came from Vodun in West Africa. It was a religion which they transplanted when they were brought over as slaves onto the plantations, and they incorporated it into their Catholic faith, and that's what Mardi Gras became. Was the day before Ash Wednesday when you gave up everything for Lent for 6 weeks, whatever it is, and just fast. Well, the day before that was Fat Tuesday when you'd have everything you wanted and completely have a big carnival,
right?
Just before you gave everything up. So that was like they made their own pagan, so to speak, the Vodun festival on Fat Tuesday, and that was the way of celebrating their religion under the guise of Catholicism without appearing to actually be doing their own religion. They snuck it under the radar, so to speak. So anyway, we kind of liked about the French connection there with the French Catholicism down in the south, and so we thought we'd give a little Creole "le" at the front of our name, and it just unfortunately was just one more thing with a name like Hoodoo Gurus, with Australian publicans, the bar owners, hearing your band's name down the phone with 20 other names, to list for their upcoming gigs that they've got the promoters put in there, they'd just get our name wrong so much. We at one time we were even written down as Two Loose Zulus. So we just the lure was one other thing they would just mess up. So we just thought we got to just cut the lure off when we can, to kind of keep things easier. So when the first lineup but basically sort of dissolved in a way because two guys left at the same time, though actually a few weeks apart. But Kimball retired because he's a filmmaker and he was a bit older than the rest of us, and he thought he should concentrate on film and rather than this fly-by-night music industry. and Rod left for a different reason, actually, because we got a bass player, and Rod thought it was a bad idea because we never had a bass the first lineup. Oh. And in some ways it kind of made us a little bit kind of unique and a little bit quirky, and we had this kind of slightly fashion conscious crowd following us at the time, and Rod was worried we kind of that we'd lost our gimmick, and so he decided he would form his own group, and he formed a sort of a fun group that was kind of a car punk band, really, called the Johnnies. But and he also wanted to be the lead singer. Really, he left every band he was in because he wanted to be the main guy. It's truly was happened. He left the Scientists for the same reason. Kim, and Kim Salmon. If you know Kim Salmon's work, there's no way he can't be the leader of that band. Because he's such a talented guy. And he's a great singer, amazing guitarist and songwriter. So he was the leader. So Rod had to leave that band. So these things happened a few times in Rod's life. But anyway, we got a bass player, and then so Rod left. So that meant we had to get a new guitarist. And that's when we got Brad in the band. So we got Brad and Clyde, and we took the lure away. Long answer. Sorry about that.
How did you get your deal with Big Time? We always want to know what bands from back in the day got their deals so differently than they do now. So there's always seems to be a good story.
Yeah, well, the funny thing is, when we were signed up, Big Time were an independent label, small label. They distributed a lot of stuff. They had Slash Records from the US. So the Violent Femmes were on their label, and I can tell you a story about that in a second. But and also a lot of stuff from Canada, because Michael, who's actually our manager now, he was in working at Big Time, and he's the one who signed us up. He was from Canada originally, so he was very interested in Canadian bands, so he got a lot of Canadian stuff as well. But basically it was Rob Younger from the Radio Birdman.
Mhm.
He knew Michael because Michael was involved with a recording and studio called Trafalgar Records before he was in big time. And Trafalgar was quite a major independent studio that a lot of the underground stuff was recorded back in the 80s, right, including Radio Birdman. They were on the Trafalgar label. And so Michael had a good friendship with Rob, and he is asking Rob, Rob used to produce bands. He did a lot of great indie records, singles and classic stuff. His name's on a lot of them from that time, and including Die Pretty. But yeah, Rob, he asked Rob, who's good in town, because it was a very active music scene back in the early 80s then. We're talking about 1981, 82. And Rob said, you've got to look at this band, the Hoodoo Gurus. They're really good. And so Michael called us in for a meeting, and as it happened, Brad had just joined the band, and Michael had been involved with the band that Brad was in previously called the Hitmen. And Brad had written the song on the new album that the Hitmen had recorded. In fact, it hadn't even come out yet. Brad quit the band before that came out, so he wasn't very popular with his band, and nor were we with them. Yeah, they didn't like us either for taking him. But he liked the Hoodoo Gurus. He came to our first gig, Brad, so he was a fan. So when we asked him to join through Clyde, who Clyde knew him very well, Brad jumped at the chance. So anyway, so Michael thought, well, I've got to keep Brad's, publishing under wraps because he's on the new album of the Hitmen, who are on our label. So he was interested in us for two reasons then. So we had a meeting and he signed us up basically. And everyone else in the industry, all the major labels and other labels just laughed. They thought, who's going to sign this loser band? This isn't what's happening in music. They're playing guitars.
Yeah. Right about that time, it was a lot of keyboard and synths and things like that going on. So you come out with the kind of guitars that the Gurus, were the sound that's a little wasn't what was happening.
It was very against the grain, and and we were against the grain for a long, long time. Radio didn't like playing distorted guitar sounds. The Ramones, as we know, never got any success on mainstream radio. Right. It's a disgrace. Like bands that completely influenced by them, of course, whether it's Nirvana or Green Day or whoever, million bands, Blink-182, all these bands wouldn't exist without the Ramones. Right. But the Ramones, and they all got the airplay, but the Ramones missed out, so, and I'm not saying we're the Ramones, but we were influenced by the Ramones ourselves. But, in Australia, like that sort of approach was not popular until after Nirvana basically had Smells Like Teen Spirit. Suddenly it made it okay to play loud guitars on radio. But we managed to get a few tracks on anyway before that, so I shouldn't really complain.
No, I'm just saying you had some decent success early on with some really good singles. And what the first album was Stone Age Romeo?
Yeah.
I mean, what a great out of the gate album that was. And you did have success, but back in those days of the early success, what were the Gurus really, when you think genre wise? I mean, right now, I talk about them and I say, well, it's kind of like really heavy power pop. It's still got the harmony and the melody and everything, the jangle, but it hits you,
That's it. Well, as I say, when you go back to my high school band, that kind of gives it away, really. And we're all in the same boat that way. We have similar influences. But for me, I love, heavy rock, Led Zeppelin, and things like that. But I also love, power pop, so to speak, but didn't exist as a term yet, actually.
Right.
But, I grew up with the 60s pop music and then glam rock, which is kind of like a good fusion of both in a way. Glam rock was like bubblegum with, kind of modern production and it was weird, but, it was a great transitional phase between punk rock, and 60s punk. Glam rock was the real inheritor of those, the glue between those two areas. And those things are still there. I mean, there's a lot of glam rock on our new album, I think, if you probably noticed. Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, listening to some tracks and things, I've always said the Gurus always reminded me of taking some of the more psychedelic, over the top Beatles tunes and really cranking it. Like there's a track, and I forgive me, I haven't listened to it that closely to remember the name off the new album. I was like, it's She Said, just turned up to 11 and really giving it a kick in the ass. And and I loved it. And it was just like, this is awesome. This is really, really good stuff. And
yeah, well, it's like we don't think of genres really. I mean, and that's the thing, which has probably been our strength and our weakness, because we don't actually fit into anyone else's sort of pet category.
Right.
I mean, like I remember years ago we went to Spain to tour, and they loved Sonage Romeos and Mars Needs Guitars, and those sort of, and they took them for the power pop aspect of the records, and they kind of overlooked the heaviness of it, and certainly as later records proved, because we started to get closer on record to our live sound as the longer we kept recording, because it takes a while to kind of find your feet in the studio. And so when we got there, they were appalled actually, because they said, "You are metal. You're too metal." And it's
my God, really?
It's like, we were pretty loud on that tour, I must admit. We did have an overbearing stage volume for some quite small clubs, because we've been used to playing quite big stages. And by the way, our drummer, Mark, most of our career, Mark is the loudest drummer acoustically you'll ever imagine. So, in fact, you need to play loud on your amps to get over him. So we were pretty we were pretty scary in some quite small clubs in Spain, so we probably did become a little bit like an assault for people, and they wanted to hear a bit more of the delicacy, which we couldn't quite deliver for them.
But
what you think is probably your most power pop album.
Yeah.
Which one? Sorry.
Blow Your Cool, I think, is probably your most power pop album. That's how I hear it anyway.
Right. Yeah, it was funny because that album to us was a bit of a, I mean, we've often said in interviews that people are probably sick of us dissing it in a way, but we really didn't like the producer we were working with, and he made it very 80s sounding to us. It had those gated snares and things like that. It was and he had a certain kind of mainstream approach which didn't really sit well with us, and we were a little bit at odds artistically with him. And also, I think we were in a weird place ourselves artistically. We'd had all the success with our first two albums. We were kind of poised to break through in America, and I think maybe we had our heads out of the game a little bit into that, instead of thinking about just not giving a rat's ass and just doing the music. If we made the record the way it was meant to sound, it wouldn't feel as badly like it seems to be too close to the commercial spectrum for my taste.
Right.
But the songs themselves, maybe not the production, but the songs themselves structurally very power pop.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've always, I've never changed my songwriting approach from day one, because I can't. People often ask me, because I've had some big hits, particularly in Australia, obviously, and in fact, the song off that album, "What's My Scene," is a huge hit, and in
a couple different ways, yeah.
but people, they think that you must, when you write a hit, Dave, and like I don't write hits, I only write songs,
Right.
It's just I'm lucky that I do like songs with a really strong melody, and I like to have lyrics that are pretty clear and that deliver like straight to you without having to make you, kind of go back 10 times to figure out what is he saying and why is he saying that. My lyrics tend to have hopefully, almost conversational is my approach, is how I like to have them, so you kind of understand exactly what I'm saying when I'm saying it.
Yeah.
So that tends to, I guess, maybe make them more immediate for radio sometimes. I don't know. Whatever. But all I know is that when the very few occasions when I've been writing a song going, wow, that's so catchy, that's going to be a hit. Seriously, I've actually had that thought maybe 2 or 3 times in my life. And each time the song has just been rubbish. I've gone back to it afterwards going like, what was that? That's no good. And or else I go in a rehearsal studio with the band and we start playing and it's going like, oh, this smells. It doesn't work. It just doesn't, it's just inert. So, but usually I write a song because I have to. And like a song like Bittersweet, for example, when I was writing it, I had no thought that the Hoodoo Gurus would ever play it, because it seems so different to what we'd known for on our first album. And, it's quite a introspective lyrically, and musically it was kind of different completely, really. It was a real left turn. And I just thought, this won't be a Hoodoo Guru song. No way. And, of course, when we started rehearsing it sounded right. So, I can't tell. The band is self-sourced from what I bring in. I mean, I have an idea. I mean, I obviously what I've written over the years, it works for the band, so that's true. But sometimes the songs I think will be really fabulous for the band sometimes don't sound as good as I thought, and other ones that were kind of like just a bit of an idea take on a new life when we get in the rehearsal studio and it suddenly becomes something. Like, for example, on the new album, Answered Prayers. I wrote that riff on the way home from rehearsal. I just in my head. It's a very simple riff, but I thought, oh, it sounds like suicide or something, And so I, just put it in my voicemail on my phone, memo function. As soon as I stopped at a light somewhere, avoid the cameras looking, and then we got to the studio and we started, and we next day I think it was, and started playing it, and I started singing some melody over it, and it was right away had something going on, and as I say, this is our first thing with Nick, trying to work on a new song with Nick, so it was quite a important moment for me and for the band, And so, and I went home and that day, kind of excited by that, and I had the little the little recording I made on my phone again in the studio at the start of the band. And then the next morning, I wrote those lyrics out all at once. I didn't change virtually a syllable of that lyric, and it was so scary, that lyric, because it's quite an ugly subject. The song's about basically an abusive relationship. Someone who's incredibly toxic, and this other person is just manipulating to his will, and I'm singing from that person's point of view, from the abuser's perspective, which is kind of ugly, and but it's got this sort of catchy tune, and it sort of seems to be about maybe about being kind of a bit of a the man, someone who's like got the whip hand in this relationship. It's actually someone that's not good, that they're that person, because they're abusing their power, and it's ugly. Yeah. So but anyway, that was a whole other ball game, but. Yeah, so that's a song that kind of, in a way, I didn't really write it like sitting down and going, here's the song and here it is, guys. It kind of just came together of its own accord, Mm-hmm. So that happens too.
That happens a lot. I mean, Burton Cummings from the Guess Who, he wrote These Eyes on a cab ride to the studio. It just
happened.
Yeah.
Well, the Flamin' Groovies, I think, heading for the Texas border, they kind of wrote because they needed another song for their album. And one of the greatest songs of all time. I think, remember Walking in the Sand, Shadow Morton. He wrote that on the way to the studio in about half an hour. He had the studio booked. He had in those days, it was all live to disc virtually, to 2-track. And he had the singers booked. He had the session players. He wanted to be a producer, but he'd never done it before. And he didn't have a song. So he wrote it on the way to the damn studio. How do you do that?
Well, in the new Beatles Get Back documentary, you hear Paul saying to John, "Come on, you got we're almost out of time. You got to give me something." And John was basically like, I work best with my back against the wall or something, And he comes up with that kind of stuff.
Well, that's what I do. I'm very much a procrastinator when it comes to working on music, and I mean, I'll collect ideas like I was saying on the memo function, but I'll leave them like that usually. And that they just go they sit there for years. And then when I decide we've got to do a record, I'm so bored with not doing a record and not having some new songs, it's driving me crazy. Then I make myself do it. And it's like they set there's the demo dates, there's the recording dates. We've got a budget, we've got a producer, we've got almost like a release date locked in. It's like, okay, Dave, you've got to write an album now. And that's when I do. But talking Get Back, I mean, there's that great scene actually in the movie of Paul writing Get Back.
Yeah.
How incredible is that? Because John was late, he starts playing a riff, and then
I know
you're watching it grow. I mean, that's what's magical about that series, is that you actually do get to witness real music making in real time, which you never get to see that. And from one legendary groups of all time. Yeah. It is phenomenal, that show. But people that are musicians, deeper things going on, I think, for all of us when we watch it.
Now
Sorry, Mark.
Go ahead.
What would you like people, both your longtime fans and newcomers to Hoodoo Gurus, if there's such a thing, because everyone knows you, what would you like people to get from the new album?
Well, just that it's legit. It's a real record that needs to be there. It's not just treading water artistically. It's us, expressing ourselves in the now. And there are things on there that, for me as a writer, I've been probably more obviously personal in some of the songs. I mean, they're always personal. You write your own story in them or through them, but sometimes you hide it under layers and layers of things, the narratives, whatever. But there's some that are really just quite literally me talking straight to you, I mean, there's a song, for example, there's a song called Don't Try to Save My Soul. It's basically the Dave Faulkner story. It's the Ballad of John and Yoko. whatever, it kind of just tells you about my life from start to finish, and where I, and my self-realization. And then there's other things that are, things we believe about, about things going on in the world, like Get Out of Dodge is about basically the incredible polarity now between, politics and anything really. Everyone's always intractably opposed, and you can't ever have any middle ground, and it's so counterproductive. I mean, at the same time, I'm often find myself on one of those extremes and finding the other side completely incomprehensible. So I know where it's coming from, because I kind of find it hard to reach across that divide myself, because there's things that I just, for example, anti-vaxxers, what is that? I can't understand where they're getting all this misinformation, all this stuff, but they're so convinced they're right, and they really can't be reached by any sort of thing. And it's a shame, we are so polarized.
It's
cognitive dissonance. But also the echo chamber of the internet, where you can find things that support you, and you don't have to ever hear any kind of opinions. And also, in a way, that the things that feed the positive feedback loops that start are designed to stop you looking for other viewpoints.
Mm-hmm.
So, people never actually have to think about the idea of weighing up different positions and seeing where they land in between, or on one side or the other. There can be a bit of merit to both, but they don't ever get to do that anymore, because they can just see one opinion all the time.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that song's about that. So anyway,
but Get Out of Dodge is about some of that material, but you do it with a blanket of wonderful melody and harmony. Now and you released that as a single already. Am I correct?
Yes, it was released in last year.
So you can talk about the special
2020.
The special guests that are on that track as well.
Oh yeah. We have the amazing John Cowsill from the legendary Cowsills. I mean, see, right there, it's telling you what we are about, because we love the Cowsills.
And that's going to tell you a little bit about how Get Out of Dodge sounds, too.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, well, here's what happened. So I wrote the song, and I was thinking this is like, suddenly I'm sort of doing a Brian Wilson, in a way. It's a very harmonic song, but also incredibly, I think the melody is quite beautiful. And it's all, and I just thought of straight away. I thought of Vicky Peterson. She's been on several of our albums, and she's an old friend. We toured with the Bangles way back.
Yeah.
And love them and love her. And Vicky's voice was just, I could hear her singing on this song, and I just had to ask her to do it. And of course, she is very well acquainted with John Cowsill. That's her husband. So we got two for the price of one, and of course, I mean, really, John Cowsill as well. I mean, Vicky was all I was thinking of, but now we've got both, and because they've recorded as a duo and a few different people's backing vocals on their albums. Right. One being Bill Mooney. They record on his albums, and so they come as a team. Yeah. And what a team. And it's kind of like, almost get out of the way. You make the record and we'll just be on your record. That's how good they are. But so they're on the record. It was wonderful having them.
But it fit into the whole album too. It's not like Get Out of Dodge with Cowsill and Peterson on it was this sound, and then everything else sounded like this. The whole album is just really well done as far as the melodies are concerned, the harmonies, the production's fantastic, yet it still has that Guru's punch to it.
And a lot of variety. There's some ballads on there. There's a song that I would call Bubblegum, but I can't mention the name of it.
Yeah, you can. He wants to hang with the girls, right? Is that the one? Or are you thinking of Equinox? Which one?
Actually, Equinox is the one.
Yeah. They both are kind of,
you said it.
Yeah, Brad wrote, that's Brad's song, Equinox, and it's about his, basically his marriage. Yeah, he's married a girl from California, Melissa, and unfortunately they live in two continents still. They frequently cross over, and Melissa has had to come to Australia during this pandemic a couple of times and spend 2 weeks in a hotel room with no air, no outside air or people, and she's done that, to kind of suffer 2 weeks of deprivation and sensory deprivation to see Brad, and they've done, and he was just over there for a couple of months recently, and he's going back for a few months later this year.
Wow.
So it's a really weird, unfortunately difficult right now, but they're going to get to one city eventually, but probably a year or two from now. But yeah, but he wrote that song about their marriage, and it's very special to him, and it's a beautiful, beautiful song. I think it's probably the best song Brad's written personally. And there's another great song on there, which we've been playing live, so I can talk about that one, is of Brad's called I Come From Your Future, which is kind of a little bit sort of Hendrixy, sort of, acid rock, stoner rock, something going on there. And but it's short. It's a really concise song and powerful. And that goes over gangbusters live. So yeah, so Brad's got a couple of great songs on there. The rest of mine, and yeah, there's quite a, I draw from all corners of the musical map, really. But yeah.
Well, we go ahead.
I was just going to say, how much are you looking forward to touring?
I am looking forward enormously to touring. We have just done our first show since May last year, like this past weekend. And before that, we did shows in May, April last year in Australia only, and they were outdoor shows. So that was in the middle of the pandemic, but we had a kind of a lull. Delta hadn't happened yet, and we were able to basically do some shows, but that was a brief window. We hadn't played for the whole of, virtually the rest of 2020 as well. And yeah, then a bunch of shows for a couple of months, like about 2 months last year, then nothing till now. And we're starting to do more shows now, but we still got Omicron. It's touch and go still, but we're getting whatever we can do, we're doing. And, we're hoping for some daylight, and hopefully we can come back to the US properly. We had to cancel our US tour, which was heartbreaking for us and for everyone else, obviously, especially because we delayed it twice, hoping that the pandemic would be over. Mm-hmm. But it just didn't, just kept coming back and back and back, like Jason from Friday the 13th. But
we know you have to get going here, Dave. I saw you were looking at it, and I know we're running over. But listen, you're going to announce the release of the album and more information tomorrow. Everybody can check it out on the Hoodoo Gurus Facebook page, Hoodoo Gurus Official on Instagram, or just type in Hoodoo Gurus brand new album on Google, and you get all the information. But we thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you
very much.
My pleasure, guys. Thank you so much. And by the way, the album, I can tell you, it's coming out mid-March, so it's not far away now.
Mid-March.
There we go. All right, guys. Talk soon. Hey, thank you so much.
Best wishes, Dave, and stay happy, stay healthy, and we look forward to the future of new album from Hoodoo Gurus. Thank you.
Cheers.
There we go.
Well, there you go, Dave.
Going to play a little bit of another track here.
There we go.
Called Carry On.
Yeah. Classic. Thank you, Andy.
Can you imagine how that feels to be rejected by someone who was not there? I ought to laugh, but the pain is real.
Sounds good.
I like to remember, look back on those times we had.
Thank you, Kurt.
Actually, I was playing a different track than I thought. That one I wasn't supposed to play, but so you didn't actually hear that.
No, don't everybody. I had it on mute.
No, there you go.
I'll tell you. I know we've got a few more. We've got about 10 or 11 minutes to goof off.
Let me try a track that I am supposed to play. So.
I love this track.
I doubt myself sometimes, but I turned out all right. I cried myself to sleep more than once or twice. What a way to carry on.
But you heard this one.
I'll tell you what, vocally it's fantastic too. It's still there. It's still.
No,
Yeah.
they sound really good. Still.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm very impressed with this album.
Yeah. Yeah. Classic.
Very catchy chorus too.
Yeah, good stuff, man.
Yeah, I mean, this is I'm really excited. This is an excellent album. They haven't lost a step.
No.
I hope that they do end up. I hope the touring gets going soon, and I certainly hope that they make it back to the U.S.
Yeah.
Primarily somewhere around Philadelphia and L.A., so we can both see them.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, something like that, they come a long distance, and with with the pandemic and whatnot, you got to be sure that they can travel and do those things before you book stuff. As you know quite well, with traveling around with IPO. So,
oh boy, do I know it! I'm keeping my fingers crossed.
Yeah, indeed.
Well,
one thing I do want to say though, because I'd be remiss, I wasn't here last week when you had a great show with special guest John Borak, and I thank John for being on there with you. But I did want to say, because I've been getting a lot of email messages about his appearance, primarily from this Southern California. They call it the SoCal, I guess. SoCal Peaceful Village Elder Care, and there's a number of octogenarians that wanted to know his phone number or his email, and I, of course, we don't give that stuff out. But John, if you're watching, the SoCal Peaceful Village Elder Care would love if you would get in touch with a number of the ladies. So they thank you for being on Material Issues, and I thank you. But that was really nice of them and you.
Absolutely, it was a fun show.
It was great.
But, I was talking about IPO Liverpool, and it's the booking's going really well. It's probably a bigger percentage of UK bands because of COVID. A lot of other bands have a lot of bands from outside the UK have some travel concerns, understandably.
Right.
But as of now, we still have more than 20 from outside the UK, and there will certainly be more than that later as we continue booking. But we're about 75% done with booking right now.
Wow.
It's going very, very well. But of course we have to keep our fingers crossed that things don't get worse and that we'll be able to do it. But I'm optimistic. I'm very optimistic. I think as the weather warms up, the number of cases are going to go down, and we're going to be able to do this. And there's also IPO Chicago in April, and I'm very excited about that. We may have some pretty cool. Well, we always have great bands, but we may have some noteworthy appearances there too. I don't want to say anything yet. I don't want to jinx it, but we may very well have a classic power pop band playing. So keep our fingers crossed on that one too. Otherwise, we have some really cool guests coming up. Next week, we have, again, rescheduled from December. And we're looking forward to a power pop icon in his own right, Mr. Dwight Twilley.
Right. Yeah.
Coming up next Wednesday, the 26th.
Right.
On February 2nd, we're going a bit off the board again, like we did with Sharon Gabbis' show. We're going to have a writer, a very noted writer of thriller, kind of FBI-oriented books. He's got a really cool new project that he wants to do that will actually involve musicians. So we both really want to talk about this because some of the musicians out there who are listening may be able to be a part of this. Anyway, his name is Alan Jacobson, and we look forward to having him on. That'll be a fun show. The next week, February 9th, we have the main man of one of the iconic bands of the mod revival, in the UK in the early to mid 80s, the Jet Set.
Mhm.
Paul Beauvoir, main man of the Jet Set, will be on, and he's still recording his own music and has a new album out. I'm looking forward to that. I should be receiving mine in the next few days. So we'll be, we love having. I mean, Paul has played IPO several times, and he's great, and really cool personality as well. On February 16th, we're hoping to have. Oh, is that right, Andy? Oh, very cool news.
Nice.
Dropping most of the restrictions over the next couple of weeks, so that's that's certainly an inroad to ensuring IPO. On the 16th, we're hoping to have talk about our first act have a #1 record in the U.S. Back in 1972 with Alone Again Naturally, and of course so many other hits. But what some people may not know is he's been recording all through the years, and the stuff is really just about as good. He hasn't lost a step. And we hope to have him on the 16th. We'll keep you posted. But yes, Mr. Gilbert O'Sullivan.
Yep.
And then on the 23rd, this just happened. In fact, 24 hours ago, I didn't even know this was a possibility, but now it is going to be a reality. The member of the second version of the Raspberries, who also put out a solo record in the 90s called Play On, which is going to be reissued with bonus track.
Yeah, wow.
So we're really looking forward to the great Scott McCarl.
Yep, wow.
Of Raspberries and solo artist fame. He will be on the 23rd.
Outstanding.
And, that'll be great. And then, after that, we've got a few irons in the fire, something potentially very exciting, and I'm sure there'll be a lot more to go. So,
yeah, indeed.
We're very, very excited.
So people have to stay tuned to the channel. Make sure you subscribe either to YouTube or you join the Facebook group and tell your friends. Pass it along.
Absolutely.
Say, guys, if you haven't, it's all archived too. All these great interviews are archived. Go back, and if you want to binge watch some material issues. But join our group, and it'll tell you when these things are happening, because we've got some incredible guests coming up, and you don't want to miss it, especially live. And you can type in the comments and say, "Hey, hi, Scott McCarl," and ask a question. Same thing with Gilbert O'Sullivan. How many people get to ask Gilbert O'Sullivan a question live? So join us. It's going to be
really
fun.
not. It's really not really out of the question to ask Gilbert O'Sullivan questions. There's a fun for you. Blech.
It really isn't. But yeah, great lineup coming up, man. I'm looking forward to it. Really something.
Well, Mark, this was another fun one. It's great, when you have guests like Dave Faulkner who, are really into it and, are comfortable talking about themselves and are so proud of what they've done, as he should be. So we look forward to more of the same and lots of it. So until then, hopefully so. Until then, everybody have a great rest of your day or night or Thursday if you're listening from Australia.
If you're Australia, enjoy Thursday.
And, let us know the lottery winners. Do your brothers in the U.S. a solid. That's right.
Yeah. I know you've taken an oath never to tell us the lottery numbers because you're a day in front of us. But listen, Dave and I could use it.
Oh boy, can we ever! All right. Well,
stay happy, stay healthy, my friend.
Absolutely. Have a great rest of your night, Mark. As always, so much fun. Take care, and
we'll see everybody next Wednesday.
Yeah. Absolutely.
All right. Good night, all.
Good night.